You are listening to the Empowered Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monica Froese, a mom of two and your secret weapon to creating a six-figure digital product business. I'm on a mission to help 1,000 women make $100,000 a year. That's right, $100 million towards financial independence for women. As an online business expert, I am teaching you everything I know right here week after week, so you can join us on the journey to $100 million. Sound good? Then let's jump in. I am talking about one of my favorite topics today, and I'm doing it with one of my favorite humans today. I am talking to Iyanna Vaughn from Lovely Financials, and she is my bookkeeper in the business. And I've been working with her for 2 years, and she has helped me so much get a better grasp on my numbers and just be a better business owner. And so I knew that if I was going to help my audience understand their numbers better, that the person I needed to have on the show was Iyanna. So let me tell you a little bit about Iyanna, and then we'll jump in. So Iyanna says, this is her speaking, I carefully curated the Lovely Financials group made up of accountants and financial analysts seeking to guide each client through their financial goals in order to increase profit margin, improve cash flow, heighten financial awareness, and increase company value. At Lovely Financials Group, we pride ourselves on making sure your company, business, or brand is organized and prepared to make and surpass financial goals of 7 figures or more, which of course is the ultimate goal, not the ultimate, but a goal that many entrepreneurs are always seeking for, always looking to reach, I should say, which is that 7-figure mark. So Iyanna is one of those people that can help you do that. So let's bring her on and hear all about how we can leverage our numbers in our business to work for us. Iyanna, welcome to the Empowered Business Podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Monica. I am so excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Iyanna and I have worked together now for, I was trying to look back. I think it's at least 2 years, right?
Yeah,
Would you say it's 2 years?
Yeah, just about 2 years, almost 2 years. We're like literally right there.
Okay. So Iyanna and her team, they are amazing, and they have saved my butt when it comes to finances in terms of, like, it was the game changer. I'm just going to preface, it was like the game changer to actually know my numbers, get them timely, just something we could talk about. Which Iyanna's team's great. And she just has a fantastic team that's so pleasant and easy to work with. So I'm excited that you're here because I know, since you've helped me so much in my business, that you are going to help all of our listeners get their money stuff in order. So the first question I always like to ask everyone is to tell us about their entrepreneurial journey. What made you want to be an entrepreneur, the journey to get there, and what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, first, I want to thank you so much for the amazing compliment. It's been a joy to serve you these past 2 years, and really want to thank my team. Shout out to the team. Without them, yeah, thank you so much. It's amazing to have people on your team that really serve our clients as if they're family, like really wanting to just make sure we have their best interest at heart. But back to your question. So my story in entrepreneurship is really interesting. Ooh. So I'll start back in college because that is the pivotal point and where accounting became an interest to me. So in undergrad, I was a healthcare management major, and I took accounting and I fell in love with it, oddly enough. And I wasn't an accounting major, but my professor just pushed me to change my major. However, I was expecting my daughter at that time. So I was near the end of my college career, and I was telling myself, hey, I'll come back to accounting since that's what I love. Let me just get through this degree so I can have this child.
I know that feeling.
Right. And after I had my daughter, I was just overwhelmed with the state of just me thinking, okay, if I'm going to work at a 9-to-5 position and, work to have daycare right? And just things not kind of happening in the way that I would like. How can I change this aspect of my life? So in my family at the time, they did something called being a host parent. And that's where they foster adults with developmental disabilities to live in their home as family, be an advocate for them to do things on their own, right? Live their in their way, the most independent life. So being immersed in that for, throughout some years, it was suggested to me to do that within my own home. So that's when we invested in that area, and we had individuals living with us as family, and it was a really great situation. However, I was a mom. I felt like a mom of three overnight, and I was like in my mid 20s. So it was extremely hectic. So, with that in mind, I said, how can I do things for myself? How can I have a life of my own outside of being a mom, taking care of everyone else, and running a home? And that's when I started doing like crafting. I started getting into the blogging world at the time. It was around 2015 ish. And that's when I was immersed in women in online business. I was taken aback by how these women were just changing their family legacies, and the one thing that they were afraid of were their numbers. So thinking back to accounting in college, I was like, hey, maybe I can be of some support to these women because I'm no one's blogger. Let's just make that clear. But I can actually, be helpful in a different way that I'm passionate about. So at the time, I was researching how can I conceptualize what I've learned in accounting to actually make it a business. And that's when I came across a bookkeeper course where it one conceptualizes kind of the financial accounting system. And financial accounting is really just documenting the numbers of the ins and outs like revenue, expenses, and creating financial reports such as the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. So with that knowledge, and then with the course, I was able to then create a workflow to offer as a service so that I can start my business. So it started as a bookkeeping only firm at first. And that's where I started serving women, and now they had their reports to them. However, what do we do with these reports when we receive them? That was the next question.
That's a good question. I mean, personally, I look at them, but I am a freak of nature in that regard, in terms of probably a lot of people you work with.
Right. Yeah, Monica, she definitely understands what's going on. So that is really, it's really fun when we talk because we could just kind of go straight into how can we plan for the next thing. And you have your own set of plans too. So it's just good to collaborate together. Whereas a lot of entrepreneurs, this is a point in which they need some support on. And I'm happy to deliver that support. So as I was doing bookkeeping, we were sitting in these meetings. And since I was working with only online entrepreneurs, I kind of understood how their business was in a way. And saying that is, hey, this strategy can work I've seen this strategy work for one of our other clients. Maybe you can incorporate this, or just thinking holistically of not just the financials, but how can we marry the operations, the marketing, the sales, so that we can create your financial future for success. So then we started developing advisement, 1 hour meeting advisement. Then it was like, how can I take this a little step further and be more intentional about the service that we offer our clients? So now I think we started just positioning ourselves as a CFO firm more so than bookkeeping alone. Around 2019-ish is when we kind of did that. Like, hey, we are here to serve you with more.
And can I ask you just to define the difference between bookkeeper and chief financial officer?
Right. Okay. Yeah, this is a great question. So a lot of times people use these interchangeably. So I'm going to go over a bookkeeper. A bookkeeper is someone who reconciles or codes or categorizes your transactions in your accounting system. And then they produce for you your financial reports. Again, that's the income statement, AKA the P&L, the profit and loss statement. That is your balance sheet. And that is also your statement of cash flows. Now, I want to point this out here. Please do not think that your bookkeeper is going to offer you advice. They are offering the service to produce the financials. They may or may not meet with you to help you understand what the numbers mean, but do not, unless it is explicitly written out in your scope of service, think that they're going to help you strategize for your future, right? An accountant is very similar to a bookkeeper. However, they're able to do more higher level services with you. Now there's a financial accountant versus a tax accountant. Now the financial accountant is basically doing really similar things to the bookkeeper, but they're able to, if they have a CPA license, they're able to do more advanced work for you. And a tax accountant, once the numbers are complete, they're going to show the compliance of those numbers as a return to the state and to the federal government.
Which is what I have. So I have you as my bookkeeper. You get all my numbers together. You make sure all my financials are in order, chart of accounts, all that stuff. And then I have a tax accountant who's local to me. So he understands New York state law, how to file my taxes. And what I have learned, a very important thing, which we've talked about, is that a tax accountant is reactive and cares about compliance. So he's going to make sure that I don't get audited by the IRS. If I do, he will be the point person for making sure that he works with the IRS for it, but that better never happen because I'm very type A and I have all my stuff in order. But there's a gap there, which I think is probably where that CFO services fit in, because I learned this, that, hey, great, it's good to have timely reporting from my bookkeepers. It's great that I am in compliance with the federal and state government, paying my taxes, filing my returns. But there's a lot of strategy that goes into numbers.
100%. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because after you get through compliance, you want to go into the strategy. And right before we get to the CFO, there's someone that can help you strategize your taxes, right? Because we're going from reacting to planning. How can you know exactly what your liability can look like once you've mapped out your financials? Yeah. So where the CFO comes in, think of them as an executive to your business. And that person is helping you. They're coming in and they're saying, okay, I'm coming in to help you with the financials. However, CEO, what is your vision? Where do you want the company to go? Okay, COO, if that's the same person as a CEO, just fine. But we want to understand the operations of your company so that when you are wanting to make X in revenue, how can you deliver on that revenue by what you're doing in your business day to day? Is it going to be your service? Is it going to be your digital program? Is it going to be executing on selling your product, your physical product? What happens operationally to be able to execute, and how can we be most efficient? Also, the CFO helps you understand what will it take team-wise financially to be able to create your vision or bring your vision to fruition, right? Then also they think of that CFO as someone who also thinks, okay, how do you make sales? Where do they come from? What are your conversion rates? What are your metrics? Things of that nature. And a lot of times I'm asking these questions, and maybe it's the first time they may have had this conversation. Totally fine, but let's talk about it. So by the next time that we meet, we have some numbers to go off of, because I want you to I'm not going to tell you ever that your goal is too lofty. I want to break it down, right? And know exactly what it takes to get to that goal. Maybe it takes a little bit longer, or maybe it takes a little bit more aggression in one area, but I want to know all the things so that we can create that financial picture. And I loved how you said you're type A, so you have all the data, right? So when you're thinking about bookkeeper or bookkeeping, it's really picture of your financials of what transpired.
That is also something very important I learned. When Iyanna gives me my reports, that ship has sailed. Right. The ship is gone, Right. And so here's this thing that people do. And so let me also say, I have my MBA in finance, which is why I think the CFO part I'm very good at, because that's essentially like what I got my advanced degree in. And so that makes me a little bit of a unique entrepreneur. And so, so what I realized was when I get my reports back, and it's like, okay, great. I can see things you can pick up on. Like I can see, oh, wow, like that line item, that thing that we sold did really well last month, but I barely put any focus in there. How can I recreate the success? And so it's always good to see where you've been, but
Right.
projecting out where you're going is
Uh-huh.
also equally important. And it's more abstract to people. So like if you're not someone like me who when I fell down the stairs 2 weeks ago, I told my operations manager, I was like, yeah, I'm in bed. I'm doing forecasting. It's so fun. She's like, you are weird. You are a weird individual. And it's definitely a skill set that I just don't think a lot of entrepreneurs have. So the fact that you're
Mhm.
offering it, because like
Yeah.
we had talked about it and you even said, you're like, I think, because we check in quarterly
Mhm.
and you're like, I probably don't need it right now. And now
In
I'm,
depth. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll get more stretched thin over the years too, of course, as the business continues to grow. But right now I have a pretty good handle on like the forecasting and stuff. So, okay, this leads me to my question of,
Mhm.
do you have a certain type of client that you either enjoy helping the most or that you've really focused in on in the business?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So we work primarily with online entrepreneurs, and that person, they sell their intellectual property online, whether it be through coaching, consulting, they have a service, they have an agency. So the difference between that service provider versus the agency is service providers, usually it's like solo in a sense, where you provide that service. Whereas an agency is more so team heavy. So now the team helps you execute on the offering to maintain revenue. And then we also service entrepreneurs who e-commerce as well. I really love working with entrepreneurs who have either coaching programs where they sell their digital products or offerings, as well as agencies, just because it's kind of like how my businesses ran too. So I like to kind of know how can we be most efficient as you add to your team so that, and this is a side step too, when we think of the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, how can you go from self-employed to having business where the business runs without you eventually? How can we think about replacing yourself from your business?
What was the name of it? Is it a book? What was the name of it?
Yep. Cash flow quadrant.
Cash flow quadrant. We'll link to that in the show notes and I'll probably be reading
Yeah.
it very shortly because I love getting
Right.
recommendations like that. Nerd who wants to read about cash flow right here.
I know.
Which
So
cash flow is a big thing we need to talk about too.
yes, 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 yes. I love talking about cash flow.
It is one of my favorite topics as well. So the book must be good if you're recommending it.
Yeah, it's been a few years. And just to quick summary, the cash flow quadrant is the four areas in which you gain your money. And the first quadrant is as an employee, right? And then the second one is self-employed. So a lot of entrepreneurs who have their businesses, they are just positioning themselves at first as self-employed because they have clients, but then they really work just as much or more if they were an employee, right? But then the biggest shift is how can you go from self-employment to a business owner and then having your systems and your team run the business on your behalf, and then being an investor to gain wealth.
Ooh, yes, I'm going to love this book because I'm
Yeah.
definitely in the business owner category. Like when I was
Mhm.
the solopreneur, I was working 60 to 80 hours. And it's weird because it was very like I worked regular work hours, but then I just never really disconnected. And,
Mhm.
that's what goes. I was very determined to make this a thing. But now, unless freak circumstances, like maybe I actually want to work on a project on the weekend that I'm excited about, but
Right.
I actually 2021 was the year I was like, I am taking vacations again and closing my laptop. I've taken 3 this year where I did
Nice.
not touch. Yes. And that is like, that's the power of the systems, having
Mhm.
employees. And
Mhm.
during a regular week, I've been very transparent. I have a full-time nanny. She's here 40 hours a week. Actually, I think she's technically here 42 because my husband there's an overlap when he has to be on calls and when I'm driving
Yeah.
our oldest to school. But I work about 35 because I've actually carved out time now for self-care. I
Uh-huh.
take walks.
Yes.
And I chose to take it on the nanny time so that I'm present and spending
Exactly.
time with my kids when the nanny's not here. That was the life that I wanted. Yeah. So now I guess I'm going to be an investor next, huh? I'm excited to hear
Right,
about
right.
I don't know if I'm there yet, but man, I'm excited to learn. So I will definitely read that book.
Yes.
Okay. So I do want to get to the cash flow conversation, but first I want to ask,
Mhm.
What makes online business financials different from like the brick and mortars and like traditional business finances?
Mhm. The top thing is there's no ceiling to what you can earn, right? In this type of business. So for example, we've had multiple clients go from, hitting within their first six figures to over seven figures that next year and say they're traditional CPA. And they're like, wait, is this a thing? What is going on?
My CPA is like that. He's like, what do you do?
Exactly. And then you produce the financials and it's like, oh, and that goes from reacting to planning, right? So it's like, okay, how can you know that this growth can happen, So another thing that I see with online business owners is a lot of their lifestyle is immersed in their business, right? So you got to think, how do you separate that cost wise? Because you want to definitely take advantage of tax deductions and getting things on the bookkeeping platform. However, how can you make sure that you're not commingling those finances? It's easier to commingle when your lifestyle is immersed in your business. That's another thing that I see a lot. And really just like a mindset shift of like, hey, this needs to be on the business versus this needs to be on personal. And the good thing with online business is you can expense some things that may seem like a gray area in other types of industries. However, that's where you have bookkeeping come in place so that you can create that crystal clear picture to back you up if anything happens.
There's been a lot of discussions about like one of the things I did in this year was we did a team photo shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I took my team to the dry bar to get their hair done for the photo shoot. I would not be paying for my team to get blowouts if it wasn't for the photo shoot that is used in our branding on our website. That is a business expense, like straight up. That's not like we just got our hair done for fun, having martinis and, kicking back. We were getting it done and it was a direct relation to serving the business. So I expensed it.
Right. And then also, even if you think it's say in the case where you weren't as confident, always keep those receipts and have context. That's all you need is context as to why you're spending this on your business. And is it something that is normal? Yes, it's absolutely normal. So that when you take a picture on your website, everyone looks presentable and everyone looks polished and everyone looks like they belong together on a team.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a direct correlation to someone, like, especially the bigger you get, showing the fact that I'm not like a one-woman show. There are people behind me, they're supporting me. It's good for them to get that exposure too. Like, I don't want people to think I do all this by myself. And I want to present them in a good light, in a professional light, and the brand as well. So I will agree. Yeah. Because, CPAs typically too, when you have a local CPA, they are very used to brick and mortars. Like my CPA works with a lot of lawn care companies and like local dentists and stuff like that. And so I'm very foreign to him. Like, what are we writing off? Why do you have this chart of accounts? Like, what job education? What are you educating yourself on?
Right.
It is a very different. It's different, which is why when you have a bookkeeper who can understand that uniqueness and put your expenses in categories that they belong, it actually does make your CPA who's filing your taxes, it makes his or her life so much easier because they're likely not used to that kind of stuff with online business and where things go, and even cost of goods sold, which is probably someone's like, what cost of goods sold? Which is essentially like I would say the simple definition of that personally is expenses that relate directly to the sale. Like if so Facebook ads, for example, are a direct correlation. I get a lead from Facebook and I make a sale from it. So is that like I don't know if that's the official definition.
I would put an asterisk because when you think of cost of goods sold, you think of physical product. However, direct expenses, then it directly relates to your sale in your business. Now, this is also a conversation piece. What can be a direct expense for you can be simply an operating expense for someone else. And that goes into having someone on your team that knows, right, the vision of the entrepreneur, what would make them understand their numbers best. And then also, how do they relate those accounting terms to you that is understandable so that you know exactly what's going on.
Well, so for someone out there that's like, now, okay, again, this is where my finance background comes in. So like I get the gist of what's going on, but somebody might be like, wait, operating expenses versus cost of goods sold. They're both
Mhm.
expenses. Why would we
Mhm.
separate them?
So you want to separate them because, say, for instance, if you have a physical product, you have cost of goods sold because they directly relate to the selling of that actual good. That can be materials, that can be shipping, so that it can be shipped out to your customers. And that can also be, let's say, as a materials, shipping, maybe raw materials, things of that nature. If you have an online business, now this is really up to the business owner. Whatever helps you conceptualize your numbers the best, we can say if you have, let's use your example because you had Facebook ads. So Facebook ads directly relate to the sale of your offerings. So that's a direct cost for you as we map it out in your reporting. Whereas someone else may not
Yeah.
do
Same
that
thing
because
with
it
like
might.
affiliate commissions. I mean,
Exactly.
it's direct.
Mhm,
Someone makes a sale with their affiliate link. I pay them a
mhm,
commission. It's a
mhm,
direct correlate. So for us, we do Facebook ads, affiliate commissions, and then there are certain contractors we put up there because, like, for example, we will have some contractors create some of our digital products. Well, guess
mhm,
what? That is a direct cost to selling that
mhm,
product. That's how I see it. But from like an actual roll up standpoint for your accountant filing taxes, cost of goods sold and your operating expenses, it's all expenses that gets
mhm.
written off.
Exactly. And then the difference with operating is whether or not you make the sale, most likely this will be an expense. However, there's also something within operating expenses called overhead, which is like your rent if you have an office space, utilities if you have an office space as well. That whether or not you made $1 or $100,000, it's still going to be an expense. So operating overall is like you just need them, you just need these expenses to operate your company. Maybe you have a virtual assistant and that's an operating expense. They don't directly relate to your sale, but they directly relate to the operations of your company. So that would be another thing there. Now, going just another quick thing about direct expense. Let's say you're a photographer and you have junior photographers on your team for different projects. That would be a direct cost because they helped you execute on that project to get
Yeah.
that sale.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is
Yeah.
very unique, which is why if you're sitting there thinking, what? Well, this is why you need someone to be helping you
Mhm,
with this stuff.
mhm.
So, okay.
Exactly.
My next question then is what numbers as an online business owner,
Mhm,
when it comes down to it, when you do all your fancy stuff in QuickBooks for me, what
mhm.
numbers should I care about? What is going to help me actually run my business?
Yes, okay. So, I have a few.
Okay.
Not a ton, but we have just say the core. The core numbers, of course, is your revenue, but we do not want to stop there. Everyone, do not stop at your revenue, okay?
Do not.
Total expenses, whether you categorize direct expenses, operating overhead, all the expenses. We want to know expenses, right? We want to get your profit. So revenue minus expenses equals your profit. We want to get those margins. What is your profit margin? What does that look like? And then what do you want it to be? So say for instance, say for every dollar it costs you 50 cents to basically keep that business running, then that means your profit margin is at 50%. So I want you to understand that profit margin. Now, this is the big one, and this is something that we miss out on a lot. Your profit, your bottom line is not the same as your cash on hand. So we need to know what is your cash on hand as it relates to the runnings of your business. Now, I'm going to put basically how cash flows through your business so that you know, oh, okay, this is what actually transpired cash wise in my business. So, say at the top of the month, you have your beginning bank balance, right? All the revenue came into your company. So cash went up by X amount. Now you have all your expenses that went out of your business. That decreases your cash. But say you are an entrepreneur who has an LLC tax as a sole proprietor. That means whatever you pay yourself is an owner's draw, and that is not seen on the P&L. So if you took out a draw, then that further decreases your cash on hand. Then, say if you pay off a credit card, that's another option of decreasing your cash on hand. So now we have the net cash, right? And then we have the final balance of your bank, the final bank balance. That is something that you need to look at.
Okay. So as you get further along and you become in the States, we have something called being taxed like an S Corp. So I'm an LLC taxed as an S Corp, which essentially means now I pay myself on payroll. So that's an expense in my business. And someone told me this a couple of years ago when I like made this switch to payroll for myself. They said, you pay yourself on payroll as the owner for the work you do in the business, and the profit that you take as distribution is like the benefit of being the business owner and all of the hard work that you put in to build a company from scratch. I thought, well, that makes so much sense. I should totally get paid for the fact that I sit here 40 hours a week and work my butt off. So now my payroll is an expense. So that's coming out. So basically my cash flow at the end has already taken into account now what I pay my employees on payroll, my contractors, and what I pay myself. So now I have this cash flow number left. And I could hypothetically take that bottom line and put it into my personal bank account. However, why is that a bad idea?
Because we want to be able to holistically keep your business afloat, whether it be making sure we have taxes saved, because you still are going to owe taxes, whether it be you're going to pay the taxes on your personal taxes, you still want to, your business incur the taxes. However, you, the person, you're going to be taxed. So you want to make sure you have, now that you have a team, you want to have some emergency savings. You want to make sure you have taxes saved. You want, and this is also, I also want to suggest reading the book Profit First, because it makes cash flow management really understandable and tangible. You can't take all the profits because, again, say if this wasn't your business, either way, your profit isn't going to be what's in cash on hand. And also, you don't want to have one bank account for your business, because it just leaves you with, hey, what do I have? What is this? What's the context of this? Right?
Yeah.
So say if you were to say, let me actually pay myself a distribution, right? Let me pay myself an equity. That can be a specific account that you kind of put for yourself of like, okay, this is a owner's compensation, some equity or profit account, so that you understand this is exactly the number that I can take out from my business to pay myself an extra distribution.
Yeah. So Profit First, one of the things that really stood out to me about Profit First, which is a great book, and I don't follow it totally. I feel like every time we talk, you're like, you need a big account for this and that. And I'm not against it. I'm changing my LLC name right now. So I'm kind of like in this holding pattern, because I don't want to have to go back to a million banks and be like, can you change this and that? So,
right.
I do have what I would call my operating account, the checking account that all the money flows into, all the Stripe money, PayPal money, any direct deposits from like when I recommend an affiliate, if they pay me directly to the bank account. So that's my operating account. And I have a savings account. And to me, I view my savings, the business savings account, as my cash flow account. That's, our backup. If we have a bad month, if, we always want to make sure we hit payroll. Out of my operating account, what happens here, and I think people do this in their personal finances, and I've definitely been guilty of this many times in my life on both sides of the house, personal and business. Let's just say I had a big launch, like we just had a big launch. And so we get this huge influx of cash, and you go in and it all came into this top line account. And I'm like, we're rich. We got all this money. And it's like, oh, I also have a crap ton of responsibilities with that money. I have to pay taxes off of this. The IRS is going to want their fair share. And does that change my tax bracket that I took in all of this money? And so if you're not preparing for those things, so it's like this psychological thing when you log in and see this big number in your bank account. That's when people make bad decisions like, oh, I'm going to enroll in that $5,000 program because look at how much money I have. Or I'm going to invest in this software over here because look at how much money I have. And it's not a holistic picture of what it changes in your business when you do take in more money. And so, and I see it all the time. Like my operating account can be like, well, look at us, look at how great we're doing. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, whoa, where did all that money go? And then you look and it's like, oh yeah, payroll taxes. Like, it just, before you know it, it's gone. And so you can't operate your business by look at any moment in time by just logging in and being like, I got money, let's make decisions. Right? Do you see a lot of people doing that?
100%. And that's where, and it could go either way. So say for instance, someone sees that much cash in their business, they're just leaving it there because they don't know what to do. because they're like, oh, I don't know what this is going to be allocated for, but this is a lump sum of money here. Help me.
I can imagine that.
Right. Versus the first is like, yeah, let me just kind of swipe, take out. And it's like, no, sir or ma'am. We can't. We have a plan. And that's where forecasting comes into place, because let's say we know this launch is going to happen in the year. Maybe surprisingly, it does exceedingly well. However, there should be a plan so that we can know where to divvy up the cash, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because what happens a lot with, we committed this year to a 4 live launch model because we pivoted our business, new programs. For me, the best way to find out how to sell the new programs, how to position it, is to do live launches where you get to interact with people who are interested, figure out why they found you, all that stuff. But what happens with live launches is that cash influx happens. And I will tell you, and this is funny, I've listened to other podcasts where people obsess about, I was negative 1 month, and that means I'm a bad business owner. I'm like, not if you plan for it. So if I'm taking in 100K 1 month on a launch, chances are, and especially because of how money comes in and out, I might have some of the expenses that should have been paid in launch month actually come out in the next month. So we go negative almost 100% of the time. We go negative the month after a launch. It's planned for, which is why if I had logged in on the 30th of that month and said, oh, we're rich, and then all my expenses start coming in, regular operating expenses start coming out for the next month, and our income, because it's hard after a live launch. You have to recoup you probably burned out your warm audience at this point, and you're probably not going to go into another major sales promotion because you're tired, and so is your team. Right. And so we're going to have lower revenue, but our fixed expenses are the same. So
exactly.
So if I had taken everything out on the live launch months, we would be in a world of hurt. That negative. And so it's funny now that I've done this long enough, I can pick up on when people start obsessing about a negative month. My question's like, oh, you don't know how to manage your cash flow, because this wouldn't be an issue if you were planning for it.
And just to clarify, when Monica says negative month, she means negative profit in that particular month, but cash flow is still really healthy.
Correct.
Cash flow is not profit.
Yeah. Thank you. That is so important. So holistically, the thing is, if I have a negative month, my business is not negative. We still have money in the bank. It means in that, all it means is in that container, the amount of money that came into my bank account and went out of my bank account was negative for operating expenses, revenue in that month and expenses that month. But because I have a cash flow in my business, it's not that the business is negative or that our accounts are negative. Right? Is that an accurate way? Okay. See, this is and these are just things. So here's what it comes down to. Would you say it's a fair statement that a lot of entrepreneurs, me aside, apparently, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the online space, kind of accidentally fell into being a business owner? And they just don't have exposure to these concepts. So it's even understanding cash flow and expense, all this stuff is pretty foreign, right? And so now it's your job to educate on making this easy to understand for us. And even though I'm pretty good at this, there's still lots of stuff. You give me a report every month that tells me numbers I never would have thought to look at. And then once I understand the numbers, because you give me context behind it, what it means, I'm like, oh yeah, that is pretty helpful to know, but you need someone to do that for you.
Right. Because what I see is a lot of times we come into our business with our own mindset blocks about money, period. So we've been growing to say, hey, how can we first attack your mindset blocks and kind of help you shift them at the core? Because whether or not you're accidentally making this money or you're spending it or whatever happens, the ebbs and flow of your company, you're still that person that's going to treat your financials based on your own values. So helping you switch that mindset, right, to then saying, how can we educate you without being condescending? Because I'm not going to assume you know this. Just because it comes easy to someone like me or someone like you, I'm not going to judge the next person because something else is easy to you. That's why you have this business, right?
Yeah.
So helping you actually understand the numbers, I'll teach the same way every single month because you may not remember, and that's okay. So once we help you change the mindset and help you understand what they mean, now it's time to actually map out your future. And I love how you were talking about finance, right? Accounting is working backwards, right? Looking at the past, whereas finance is looking at the future. So how can we marry the two together so that we can leverage what your future will look like? So,
which is why big companies, because I came from a Fortune 100 company, we had
mhm.
accountants that managed the books, made sure that all the money was
Exactly.
being reported. And then we had
Mhm.
financial analysts that were like, we had a big deal
Mhm.
coming in, and then we do models on that big deal to make sure that it would be
Yes.
profitable, forward thinking like that. When you really think about your business, if you look at like how a big company operates, well, essentially you're going to operate the same way. You're just going to have to figure out,
Yes.
it doesn't change like the business.
Exactly.
Yeah, business
Exactly.
principles don't change.
Right, right. And people try to fight it. I'm not gonna be, but then you end up doing the same thing. And that's totally fine. And that's how we've positioned our company too, because we have an accounting department which handles the past financials, the bookkeeping. We have the finance department, which is where we help you forecast the future and do the different models and things of that nature. And then we have the tax department where we do preparation and strategy. So it's like there's different I I would pull off my eyelashes, pull them out if I had to reconcile transactions and then the same day
Right.
present to a client a report. I've done that before and I hated it there. So I wanted to separate those different things so that whoever on my team is an expert in this arena, they can shine in their specific department, right? So, yeah.
Just like why, and as a business owner, it's like I've had people ask, wait, why do you have a bookkeeper and a tax accountant? And now we're talking about, the tax strategists and things like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
because they serve different purposes. Like if I came to you and said, can you tell me about New York State's corporate laws and can you make sure that like I'm taking full advantage of it? You'd be like, I mean, I don't
Right.
operate in New York State and that's not my area of expertise, but I live
Right.
in New York State and I pay New York State taxes. So I need someone who knows that. And so I think that's kind of like the beauty of running your own business is that you get to
Mhm.
basically go out and find the people who are going to create like a stellar team around you,
Mhm.
and leverage them together. Like you are on emails with my CPA, and
Right.
it's cool if there's like a synergy there that you create, and okay. So this is my final question because
Yeah.
this is the $1 million question I get,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you get.
Mhm.
When should an
Mm.
online business owner hire a bookkeeper?
Okay. So when it really depends, right? Because I think even starting out the gate with even if that person isn't doing your monthly bookkeeping, at least getting educated on actually on how to do it, right? When you're within your first six figures, I think if it's not in your wheelhouse, just outsource it. You can go to an affordable platform like bench.co. They can get your numbers straight to you because if you're spending time learning it and actually doing it and wondering if it's right, that's not a best use of your time as an entrepreneur. So I think even if I were to start over again and if I wasn't in this industry, I would just get a bookkeeper off gate because I know that my numbers are going to help me understand and expand my financial future.
Yes, I am in complete agreement. Honestly, like you said, like go to a platform like bench.co. That's essentially, I used a bookkeeper that cost at the time a lot less than what I pay you,
Mhm.
but it was
Mhm.
not the same strategy,
Right, right.
and understanding the ins and outs of online business, but it was enough that I had, I knew that at the end of the day, everything was accounted for and, my taxes could be get filed. And I wasn't sitting in a spreadsheet logging, I do high volume transactions. It was insane. Like my
Right.
spreadsheet was like 2,000 lines one month. And I was like, I
Mhm.
don't have time for
Mhm.
this. It's not that I can't do it because I actually understand it, but that's not a good use of my time. So I actually am a big proponent as well to have a bookkeeper as like one of
Mhm.
your first expenses because you
Mhm.
just can't grow if you don't have a handle on your numbers.
Right. And then once you, in my opinion, get to a quarter million sales, like 250,000 plus, that's when you kind of need a more robust type of support because
That's what
then,
I did.
yeah.
That,
And then
yeah.
once you hit 500K and above, that's when you need someone who's more of a CFO, where that person can help you strategize even more for the future.
We are in complete agreement. I think I
Yeah.
actually waited till I hit 400 to get you. I would have done it
Mhm.
sooner.
Yeah.
And then now, like I'm pretty solid on our forecasting now, but I could see it quickly getting away from me as things, because it's like the bigger you grow, the more things you have to take into account. And like, there's just things that I'm sure I don't know that I'm going to have to take into account later on. And that's why it's good when there's people like you around me who can be like, you kind of forgot that this is a thing now. I'm like, well, or I just didn't know it was going to be a thing because I've never had this much money before, you know?
Right.
Okay. So how do people like work with you? Where do we send them?
Yes. So our site is at lovelyfinancials.com. So we have a service where this is something new, 6-week boot camp. I think it is really extremely important to have someone really help you understand your numbers, not only the numbers, but where your goals are, where your pain points are, your mindset shifts, right? And understanding where your operational needs go and understanding what your team is going to look like. So we have a boot camp there, and then we have our monthly services. And that's, of course, what you receive, but more specifically for entrepreneurs who are just at the cusp where they're like, okay, let's graduate from our regular bookkeeping solution to a more advanced solution. We have that monthly services as well as CFO services. And then let's say you're just beginning and you're like, hey, I need to know, I have this one question. We have 1-hour strategy sessions where I help you really conceptualize and understand, hey, you have this question, let's actually map it out, right? So that you can completely understand what's going on. So that's how we work with our clients so that we can help them raise their profit margins, understand their cash flow.
Yeah, those strategy calls are like, I remember in the early days, I would book an hour strategy call with a lawyer because it's just like, I can't afford to put you on retainer, but I want to make sure I'm, I have all these, get your ducks in a row, think through all your questions. That's a brilliant way to get started. I love that you offer that because that's just, it can ease someone's mind to take that next step in their business, just, making sure that they have what they need, or they're at least tracking what they need in the interim until they're ready to hire that service out. So that's awesome. So we'll link to all of that in the show notes, of course. So thank you so much for joining me and talking all about numbers, one of my favorite topics. And you're one of my favorite people to work with.
Thank you, Monica. Yeah, it's funny how we geek out so much.
Yeah.
So we could go on and on.
We could. It's like, I never get upset when I have a call with Iyanna. Some people probably get a call with their financial people and they're like, oh, I really have to do this today. And I'm like, woohoo, I get to talk about numbers. And everyone thinks I'm nuts. But it's fun. It's fun.
Yes. And it's like really working with you as well.
Yeah. So thank you so much. It was a great episode.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Business Podcast. If you want to get started creating your own digital products and don't know where to start, we have a brand new training that can help. It's called Passion to Profit: How to Discover Your Unique $1 Million Digital Product Formula. Head on over to empoweredbusiness.co/profit to join the training for free. Plus, we've added on a private podcast feed to make consuming the content even easier. You can choose to consume it via video or a private podcast feed. I can't wait to see you back here next week.